It's a whole new ball game as the Marshall Thundering Herd bring in West Virginia native Tony Gibson. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, we are almost halfway there. 2,494 subscribers midway through Tuesday, my day off. So almost to that 2,500 mark. Do appreciate it as we are so close. Need 6 more before kickoff on Saturday. We got ULM on Thursday, App State on Friday, but we're counting as Saturday as that kickoff time. So we do have Tyler Kennett from the Herald Dispatch in his first year of covering the Marshall Thundering Herd. We had Kevin Foote with more than 4 decades of covering sports in Acadiana, covering the Cajuns for the last decade or so. And we had Kevin Tuberville covering Arkansas State for over 3 decades as well for the Jonesboro Sun. So I like Tyler in his first year with the Herald Dispatch. We talk about the differences between Tony Gibson and Charles Huff. We talk about the Marshall Thundering Herd's quarterbacks. How many could they play against Georgia opening weekend? And what's his initial thoughts covering the Marshall Thundering Herd? He is a Marshall alum. What's that like? And so we will talk to him about that and kind of a responsibility of covering this football team with such a storied history. He is on the Belt Beat. He is covering the Marshall Thundering Herd for the Herald Dispatch. He is Tyler Kennett, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We continue our feature on the Belt Beat. We've had a couple of guys that have 4 decades in of covering their teams. Kevin Foote in Louisiana and Acadiana, and Kevin Tuberville with covering the Red Wolves and the Jonesboro Sun. We're doing the opposite now. Tyler Kennett in his first year of covering the Marshall Thundering Herd for the Herald Dispatch in Huntington, West Virginia. Thanks for hopping on the podcast, Tyler. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask you the initial question. What is the biggest difference, if anybody has elaborated on Tony Gibson and Charles Huff?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference probably is culture. Jalen Slappy.
What does that mean? That's a big trendy word these days.
Oh,
Everyone's
for
trying
sure.
to bring in their own culture.
You hear coach speak, there's media speak too.
Yeah, what's Tony Gibson's culture versus Charles Huff's culture?
I think that not to demean anything that Coach Huff did at all, but obviously Gibby is from West Virginia. The staff is from West Virginia. There seems to be a heavier focus on the traditions, and I would say the in-state aspect of it all. I'm from West Virginia. I went to school at Marshall, so it seems like there is a level of care for what has happened in the past, of course, with the plane crash and the tragedy there, and the attention to detail. Not only that, but nearly a quarter of the roster is in-state players, transfers they brought back who are from West Virginia, from the area. Toby Payne at captain, also a guy from Poco right down the road as well. So there's a lot of big emphasis on that, I would say. Probably the biggest difference for sure.
All right. And okay, so let's move on from there. What has been the overall sentiment in camp? Because, again, it feels like, I don't know, maybe just the guys I'm following on Twitter, something like that, and Huff does a good job on his Twitter feed about promoting all the transfers that he gets in. And so many of the players came from Marshall and some high profile guys. But it feels like Coach Gibson did a really good job, maybe under the radar, of getting those guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So what's the outlook? What's the feeling coming out of camp? Right? I mean, it's going to be tough opening up against Georgia. We know what's going. We have an idea what may or may not happen this weekend, right? So it's going to be tough to truly judge how good Marshall's going to be this year. But what's the outlook coming out of camp? What's the feeling about this team as camp has winded down?
I think that the biggest question going in, obviously, in modern football, I guess it's kind of the thing of how do you get so many guys on the same page? That was kind of the opening question going into camp for everyone was just, obviously you bring in over 70 newcomers and a lot of those guys are expected to play. So what is the goal? I think a lot of those guys, particularly the offensive line, really gelled together quickly to where that's not really a question anymore that you can ask and get an answer you haven't already heard, right? So all across the board, it seems like the competition is obviously there at just about every position. Coach said himself that they used the depth chart kind of as a tool to get guys to compete, and they were changing around stuff just about every day to where even now, there is like the unofficial depth chart and the game notes and everything, but a lot of those positions are still up for grabs. We talked today at press conference for weekly, and it was one of those things of any of these guys could come around and be the guy, so I think that it's kind of like a rising all tides kind of thing. You have that experience across the board where you have some guys who haven't played a whole lot, you have some guys who have played a whole lot, and they kind of have lifted each other up, because it seems that that's been a big thing, is the depth that this team has at running back. Coach said today there could be 5 or 6 guys they trot out for that position. Really across the board, it seems like there's a lot of depth everywhere, which means, more questions for me, but at the same time, a lot of answers to be found as well.
Talking to Tyler Kennett from the Herald Dispatch, Huntington, West Virginia, covering the Marshall Thundering Herd. He's on the Belt Beat, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, so it's always nice to talk about culture and being on the same page, but I always think whether it's a first-year head coach, that's nice in theory, because he has an idea of what that culture is supposed to be. He has an idea of what everybody is supposed to be on the same page, but he doesn't even know on what that's going to look like until it happens. I have a better, at least in my mind, I think he would have a better idea what that looks like in year 2, more so than year 1, like Major Applewhite, right? Like he's going into year 2, although it's more or less year 5 because he's in the same spot. But I would think that he's got a better idea of what year 2 would look like. So I think that's even much more difficult when you got 70 new players and it's a new coach to get everybody on the same page and to do it really quickly. Do you know how many more players they took in after the spring? Was there a whole bunch of new players after spring ball? Because that's really hard.
There's a handful. Tony Mathis is a guy who sticks out at running back, played at West Virginia and was at Houston and came over. The biggest thing, really, special teams turnover, bringing in Lorcan Quinn from Ireland. That's been a really interesting story because he was a guy who was doing a lot of, individual work, and now he will likely be the guy there as well, who, we talked to him a lot about like what it's like to come over and participate in a camp and all of that stuff when, he comes from a Gaelic football background and all of that. I think those are probably the biggest additions in terms of what you pulled over, but really the spring retention into fall camp seemed to be very strong. Perhaps maybe because of the way that he recruited it was very intentional in making sure he, in his words, got guys who wanted to be there. Obviously, you're going to hear that from every coach, right? But it seems particularly true. A lot of guys, bringing in that local talent and having that foundation of guys like, Jalen Slappy and Toby to really spearhead that role. Even so with, Mike Green, the success he had as well. I believe that Coach Gibson said that he was kind of willing to help out in terms of that. Like he stuck around for one of the first meetings and everything before he got into his prep for pro day and all of that. So there was also some guys they pulled in that were on their staffs at former locations, right, as well. So you kind of have that as well to bring in, Jalen Parker, Cannon Lewis, those guys kind of stick out as they kind of bring over to that kind of carry over a little bit to where it seemed like there wasn't as many significant departures outside of special teams, of course.
All right, so if Mathis is going to contribute, I feel like running back is kind of one of the easiest positions to move into. I know there's some more intricacies to it in terms of picking up the blitz and, maybe catching a ball out of the backfield, but it's basically hanging on the ball and, running to the hole and through the hole. And I'm going to go all stereotype. You mentioned somebody from Ireland. I presume that's the place kicker.
Yeah, he'll mostly do, like field goals and whatnot. I mean, he's kind of had a camp resume of, some 60 plus type of things. He said it in camp that he in his words, I thought it was hilarious. He was like, I haven't tried anything crazy, but then he was like, I'm hitting 55, and I think there was only a handful of kickers in college football last year that were at that mark. So he's progressed really well. I think the biggest thing for him is the mental aspect. He kind of talked about what it's like to play Gaelic football, where you're kind of always on the move, you're always doing something, always kicking, and then from that to American football, where you kind of have to keep yourself kind of locked in when you're kind of coming in and out. So that'll be interesting to watch for sure. But yeah, for him, and then a local guy in Totten, Nathan Totten, he will kind of be the punter, on that side of things. So he returns as a guy from I believe he's from Russell or Ashland, something like that, right over in Kentucky. So he's a local guy. So you kind of have that mix, of a local guy, hometown guy, and a guy who is coming over from overseas.
Let's take a time out. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with the Herald Dispatch's Tyler Kennett, who's the starting quarterback, or we may find out maybe multiple quarterbacks for the Marshall Thundering Herd against those Georgia Bulldogs. We'll do that after I tell you about Monarch Money and FanDuel. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. And FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And by the way, Georgia Southern went from a -1.5, or in this case, +1.5 underdog to 1.5 point favorite like that. They are on the road to Fresno State. All right. Also, we got this for you if you are interested. We have an important request. Lockdown wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's LockedOnPodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We continue our conversation with Tyler Kennett from the Herald Dispatch, covering the Marshall Thundering Herd, who is expected to be the Marshall Thundering Herd starting quarterback against those Georgia Bulldogs. Talking with Tyler Kennett from the Herald Dispatch, Huntington, West Virginia. He's Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. He's on the Belt Beat, first year covering the Marshall Thundering Herd. Let's talk about the starting quarterback, because I guess we don't know who that is going to be. And it's not the first time I've run into this. I guess we're going to find out who it is when they run out of the tunnel and take the field on Saturday against Georgia.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth and really out of Coach Gibson's mouth as well. That's what he said today. The three guys all camp, even it was mentioned in New Orleans as well. Carlos Del Rio-Wilson transfer, Zion Turner transfer, and Jakai Long, another hometown guy from Hurricane, West Virginia, about 40 minutes or so away. So very you have the returner, but he doesn't have a ton of in-game experience. Obviously, Carlos and Zion have more to the resume and all that. But those three guys kind of all off-season have been the names that have floated around. The expectation, I think, is to see that kind of revolve a little bit, see a couple of guys run a couple of drives. His words today were if a guy's struggling at Georgia, that they'll probably put another one in, see how it goes, and kind of run around. I guess it's a good problem to have. It could also just be a thing of nowadays, I mean, obviously this is my first season covering college football, but the understanding I have is that a lot of people like to keep secrets as well, so it's like you don't want to reveal your hand maybe as well.
Sure. I would, there's not many more paranoid people than college football coaches. A couple of things. It would mean to me that nobody stuck out too much than others than in fall ball, right? Nobody seemed to take control because they would do it. And I'm not sure if someone's struggling against Georgia, if that's a great measuring stick, because there's a good shot that everyone's going to struggle against Georgia, right? Now, if someone does really well against Georgia, that would be
it'd be amazing. Yeah.
Yes. But I'm not sure if that's a great measuring stick. If someone, goes 3 and out twice in a row, we're putting in the next guy because it is Georgia after all.
Sure. I do think Jakai Long was a guy whose name kept getting brought up more and more as fall camp went on. He's being the younger guy in New Orleans. Obviously, you heard Coach say that he's kind of like the future piece. I do think that he's kind of had that momentum of a guy who really has taken some major strides at the time in New Orleans at media days. Carlos was the guy who Coach pointed to as like, if I started today, this is who I would pick. Right. He pointed out that all of them have different intricacies, especially in camp with the scrimmages and stuff, that Carlos is a guy who kind of operates better live. Like he's able to show more of his tool set and everything. And then, not to discount Zion as well, because he comes over from Jacksonville State, has some familiarity with Rod Smith's offense, and that sort of aspect he brings, a little bit more of a mobile guy as well, to where you're able to kind of look at each of their skill sets. I think Long has probably got, one of the bigger arms, and then Carlos is just that guy that's kind of a little bit of a mix between the two. But all of them in the spring game, which was at the time, like a ones versus twos type of thing. We only really got to see a half, but all of them looked pretty good. So it's one of those things to where I have no clue, part of that is also, with the way that practice operates, I'm not seeing absolutely everything as well. So I couldn't really, Toby Payne said he didn't care at all who it was today. So that, I guess it could be a good sign.
We're talking with Tyler Kennett from the Herald Dispatch, Huntington, West Virginia, covering the Marshall Thundering Herd. He's on the Belt Beat, Locked on Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, who are some of the weapons offensively that these guys are going to be looking for and handing the ball off to, besides Mathis, who you mentioned?
Yeah, I think at running back, Antoine Roberts is a guy who's kind of stuck around, that he's improved incredibly well coming off of injury, has the ability to take another step. Really, the running back room has been touted as one of the deepest. Michael Allen as well is another guy who could come in for that. Joshawn Barbie is at the top of the unofficial depth chart. So really, you've got guys I'm really thinking it could go 3 or 4 deep between those guys for sure. At receiver, Antonio Harmon, Jacoby Baldwin, Floyd Lacey, another guy as well who has been doing really well. I think that there's just a lot, really you look at Harmon specifically, 6'3", 202 is what I'm looking at here. So, I mean, he's got the size. He just kind of passes the eye test when you have your eyes shut. You know what I'm saying? Type of guy who can really do some stuff. And then if any position on the entire field was locked in January, it was Toby Payne at tight end. I feel like that's going to be the weapon that you really see potentially at a national level at the end of the year. That could be a guy that's getting looked at pretty heavily. I think he's going to be phenomenal.
And do you think, are we going to try and play ball control? Are we trying to spread it out? Are we airing it out? What kind of offense is Gibson going to run here?
I think it'll be pretty tempo based. My cat in the background there, but my interpretation is that, with Rod Smith's offenses at Jacksonville State, heavy on the run, that's going to be kind of what you see is a lot of, moving really quick in the spring game. That was it was one of those things where keeping stats by hand was tough, kind of quickly going through over and over. I think they want to control the pace, play really quick. The run, I would say it's probably more of a run first type of offense, but all of the guys and all of the receivers have capability. So not 100% certain what we'll see until it happens, but it's a team that really can kind of put 2 or 3 plays together at a time and try to get something explosive.
So are they trying to get the snap off within like 20 seconds? Because you can control the tempo differently. There was plenty of times when Brady and the Patriots would get up to the line of scrimmage and he wouldn't snap the ball until all 40 seconds of that play clock was done. Now, if you're not subbing, the defense can't sub. If you are subbing, then they can. So, you can play tempo games different ways. Are they trying to get that tempo as quickly as possible, or are they going to try and keep you guessing by, again, Brady's going to pick apart your sets, so that's not a fair comparison either, but that's just a different way you can control the tempo, getting up to the line of scrimmage and then not calling the play, for 35 or 40 seconds.
I think that it's one of those things where every time that a player mentions tempo, it seems that it's like we are playing quicker. And, like media availability and whatnot. I guess that'll be something that we'll see. I would say that by week 2 or 3, when you play, not that like Georgia's an impossible task, but obviously more known for its defense, right? So you're going to have maybe some more opportunities to see it as it develops. But it seems like Jalen Slappy has been a guy who has kind of touted that the tempo has improved and has gotten quicker. So I would probably lean more towards that direction.
Well, the problem is if it doesn't work against Georgia, it could be 14-0 before Tyler, has sat down and got comfortable. That's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem. Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Before he's gone through his first box of press box popcorn, it could be very quickly, 3 and out, as the case may or may not be. All right. Well, let's take one more time out. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation with Tyler Kennett. In his first year of covering the Marshall Thundering Herd, what kind of responsibility comes with covering the Marshall Thundering Herd with such a storied history? We'll do that right after I tell you about Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on your new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts for a fast project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And their Trade Master perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with Tyler Kennett, the beat writer for the Marshall Thundering Herd. What's it like in his first year covering a football program with such a storied history? All right, we're talking with Tyler Kennett. He is on the Belt Beat, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. In his first season of covering the Marshall Thundering Herd for the Herald Dispatch in Huntington, West Virginia. So what was it like? We had our guy, Luke Creasy. He moved on. He thought he was better than, covering the Marshall Thundering Herd. He went to go work for, the government. He's doing PR for the roads in West Virginia. He thinks he's better than the rest of us. And so what was it like when you got the job? What was that experience like?
Yeah, shout out to Luke. Luke and I.
Don't shout out to Luke. He left the rest of us behind.
Luke and I were we kind of overlapped very little, but a little bit in school. Both of us went to Marshall, so I was looked up to Luke a lot and really admired the work that he did. He just wanted a change of pace, and I used to work up north in Clarksburg, doing north central West Virginia, doing a lot of high school reporting there. Used to do TV anchoring as well in Bridgeport, and it was kind of I guess I would call it the dream. My wife is a lawyer, so it was kind of dictated by where she goes to work, obviously. And she got a job in Huntington, so we were going to move here no matter what. So I had kind of communicated with, because obviously we share work a little bit. If a team from down south was traveling up north, I would cover them and send it down here to the Herald Dispatch and whatnot. And I kind of poked around the idea of like, hey, if you guys need anything at all, like even if it's just high school work, let me know. And then next thing you know, I'm here, So it was a great opportunity, and I've really enjoyed it so far. Obviously, this is probably my first. Did a little bit of work covering WVU and TV, but it's just not the same as writing every day.
Well, now we now understand why Tyler can afford to be a newspaper reporter.
Absolutely, yeah.
We understand that first and foremost. That's a good job by you, Tyler. All right,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, she does a great job. She just should know she passed the bar later this week, so it's good time. So.
All right. Congratulations to her. All right. Yeah, and congratulations to you. Again, a job well done. All right. So there's, like you mentioned when we first started, there's a lot to covering Marshall. There's a lot of history to that. And a lot of that history is tragic. And Tony Gibson is leading into that history. They went to go, he mentioned that at Sunbelt Media Days, they went to go visit the cemetery and had some speakers. They went to, watch the movie, right? Mm-hmm. That's a cliche thing, but, the movie is about a decade old or something like that. And some of these kids, the players may not have seen the movie or know what it's all about. So what is it like when these guys get there that may not be from West Virginia and understand what all that means, to be playing football for the Marshall Thundering Herd?
Yeah, like as a student, I don't know if they still do this, but when I was there in the student center, they have the movie playing 24/7. It's just literally on a wall, and you can sit and watch the whole thing if you want to, right? And
no kidding.
Every fall and spring, there's a fountain ceremony with the memorial that honors the lives lost. And in the fall, they halt the water. In the spring, they turn it back on, right? And in the spring, the whole team came that was there in the spring time and whatnot to that ceremony, and coach spoke and Toby Payne spoke, and I think that's kind of where those returning pieces, as small in number as they could be, what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like that's where it really sticks out, because you got guys like I think that's kind of what makes Marshall's situation like even more unique than the average team that's bringing in like 60 or 70 new players, is that you kind of are able to set that foundation quickly, because part of the recruitment, I would imagine, obviously I didn't play any football, David, but like I would figure that part of it when you're even visiting the campus is you're going to see these things and you're going to hear about it. This is the type of community where you're going to meet someone who is affected by that, no matter where you're at. And there's something to it. I think that could even be a draw for some, that it's just like, no matter how the team is doing, that the community is going to support it. Like come November, the place is going to be packed out, even if you've not won a game in 4 or 5 years. You know what I'm saying? So that aspect of it is critical, I think. And especially for the retention, some guys were just like talking about how much it means to play here as well. And I would agree with that. Like I think that there's not very many stories like it in sports, probably period, not just college, but just in general.
Right. Yeah. And did I see this? I don't know if you know this, but is Marshall now all of a sudden playing West Virginia?
So I think literally within the past hour, they dropped the series with Alabama, but they have replaced those games with Coastal Carolina and Southern Miss. So
with Southern Miss.
So to my knowledge, that's not happening yet. I know obviously Coach Gibson has kind of leaned into it on Twitter of like, there's an opening. So that would be awesome. They didn't play. I mean, how old am I? 25, so it's like when I was a kid, Marshall W played maybe once when I was like 8 or 9 years old. So I think that it would be awesome to see that happen again. But the soccer rivalry is awesome. That's, as you mentioned with covering, yes. Like that's been a really, really fun thing. And when I lived in Morgantown, when my wife was in school at WVU, we'd go to that game no matter what, that's been really sweet. So there is some rivalry still between the two.
That is cool. So, okay. So what some of the stories that you've been working on, because it turns out Marshall did put out a depth chart compared to some other schools that decided they didn't want to put out a depth chart for week 1. What are some of the features that you're working on here in year 1?
Yeah.
At least thinking about, obviously news stories are going to pop up and things that are going to come up during the season, but you must have had some ideas to begin the season.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of written something every day that we can. Fall camp, we were getting pretty good amount of, I'm really appreciative of that from the staff and Marshall in general. We're getting 4 or 5 players after practices on some days, so that's phenomenal for us to help us do our job right. But a lot of it has just been I kind of just try to do features off of what the guys are talking about. I really have enjoyed talking to Marvay Myers. I talked to him back when he committed in January. Now he's a captain, right? And you ask him how he's doing, he always says Marvelous. That's kind of his nickname and just kind of the way he goes. His son's middle name is Marvelous. I mean, he's just an awesome dude. I like little stories like that. I really like chasing the player, like that side of things. I'm excited to put numbers to things, to be honest with you, because it's quite tough to preview things at times when there are some people who just don't even have a bio, right? So it's like it's been kind of fun to just kind of get into it. And also, of course, Marshall, the new athletic director, and working in the other sports as well with men's soccer getting started. The women's soccer team is having its best start since 2009. Really, I think I came in at a good time, because there's so much newness going on. So it's a lot of that, and just looking forward to things and finally getting rolling a little bit.
And then the baseball team had,
one of
the craziest seasons of all time. You missed the trip to Hawaii last year, but they started off poorly and then started winning and then losing. And, they finished up as one of the hotter teams, outside of the 2 top teams in the Sun Belt, right? They finished up in the semifinals. They were outstanding last year towards the end. They may be headed in the right direction. They got the new ballpark a couple of years ago. They may be okay doing baseball there.
Yeah, and it was, I think, you have to probably correct my numbers, but I think there was a point in that tournament when there were a handful of teams in the country that had a winning streak as long as Coastal, Southern Miss, and Marshall had, and they were 3 of like the 7 in the country, and they're all in one conference. So baseball is just so much fun to cover. When I was a student, it was Conference USA, and we would go do radio broadcasts at the YMCA field. So for me, I think as a student, I wrote a column for the Parthenon, the student newspaper, about how they should just build the baseball stadium already because it would be cool. And stepping into, even as a journalist again, like just even stepping foot into that stadium was just such a surreal feeling, because I grew up a big like minor league baseball guy because we had a couple teams back down south where I'm from, and I just love like in person just being able to see something like that, and it's really just overnight it seems like changed the culture and the attitude, and Coach Beals has done a great job. I really have a lot of excitement for them really across the board, like with even going back to basketball when I first started out, like Coach Jackson and Coach Folks with the run they had as well. Like, there's a lot of newness to it, but there's also that excitement obviously with it as well. Softball as well. It was fun covering Coach Zirkle in the Athletes Unlimited League in the summer a little bit.
Yeah,
so that was fun too.
A couple of years ago, the Marshall team had a nice run. A couple of years ago, she went on to Carolina. Basketball got off to a slow start last year, and they finished up strong. And so, it seems like everything is headed in the right direction. Have you had a chance to talk to the new athletic director? Because he just started.
Yeah, he's he got started. He's been great with giving us some time as well. One of the fall camp practices, I think it was the last one they had, he was literally in his first day. He had just got there, and man, he's awesome. I really like his attitude, the way he approaches things. He seems to be very, I guess I would say, like facility driven, like in the early moments of like trying to make sure everything's good before it gets going. But he's kind of hitting the ground running. He's already named his executives and whatnot, and has been a very well received hire, I think, from the community. Everybody is really behind him. He seems like a great guy.
Because that is an interesting dynamic, because that got hired backwards, because the football coach got hired before the AD. Mm-hmm. Those two got to be on the same page, and more times than not, the football coach has got to be on the same page as the athletic director. And so how is that all working out? Because that's the interesting dynamic, right? And in this case, it may have been the football coach interviewing the AD. The AD has got to be on the same page as the football coach, because the football coach was hired first. And my understanding is that Tony Gibson's getting paid a good chunk of change.
It's interesting. And I think I might be wrong because I was a student and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention. But I'm pretty sure that before Spears, former AD, was hired that Coach Huff was picked up before. That might have been the same thing happening there. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me.
What was it?
That before Christian Spears took over, that Coach Huff was also already there, and then the AD was hired. So maybe that's like kind of already happened once before to that effect. I'm mixing that up.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It is an interesting set of timing with it as well there. But I do think it'll be cool to see how that dynamic works. I do think that from just talking that that they have everyone seems to be very high praise from the coaches, and he was there for the women's soccer team when it had its first home win this season, and was in the circle kind of being like, hey, you got my first win, so it's like he seems like a very involved guy, like that he's going to be around. You're going to see him at all the things. So it's very good.
And I think it is good that they are basically coming in at the same time.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I mean, Gibson beat him there by a couple of months, but basically they're at the same time.
All right, for sure.
He is Tyler Kennett. He is in his first year of covering the Marshall Thundering Herd for the Herald Dispatch in Huntington, West Virginia. He is on the Belt Beat. Really appreciate him hopping on Locked On Sun Belt. We'll be following you all year long. We'll be seeing who the quarterback is and how many quarterbacks they can play in one ball game. Best of luck against those Georgia Bulldogs. Really appreciate your time, Tyler. Thanks for hopping on Locked On Sun Belt, and we'll hopefully we'll catch up during the year. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Thank you.